Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi everyone. Welcome to another session of our marriage series during this month of October. This is actually a prelude to SPOL. As you all know that SPOL will be happening this December 5th and 6th this year. Could we have the SPOL? By the way, okay, just to let you know about the what will be happening for SPOL this year. So the Sacred Path of Love this year, the theme is being with God in facing tribulations. Humanitarian efforts in the building of the hospital in Senegal. You will see the link on the screen here on the Facebook Live. So as we go along, if you wish to make a contribution, please visit the link. The link is bit.ly/Senegal. Sorry about that. Okay, so I will continue. So yeah, basically this whole marriage series that we have for the month of October will be a prelude to SPOL, Sacred Path of Love 2020, being the theme for this year is has something to do with COVID. So it's about being with God in facing tribulation. So we have our usual scholars. They will be with us again this year, inshallah. We have Imam Mandal, Sheikh Abdul Aziz, Ustaz Firdaus, Dr. Omar Mahmoud, and Dr. Mubarak. And also we will have a poetry recitation by Amira Aslam. So day one, we will have topics that cover, by Imam Mandal, internalizing the Al Quran therapy for the soul, being with the Prophet, experiencing contentment, removing pride, realizing Allah, dealing with stress and anxiety, and having reliance on Allah. And day two will be a workshop conducted by Sheikh Abdulaziz and Dr. Omar Mahmoud. So please visit our social media to get more information about SPOL 2020 this year. And we have different packages, package A, package B, package C. For more information, all you have to do is just Google Saud Lahi in /Eventbrite. So you will, when you get to the Eventbrite page, you will actually see a lot of information about SPOL 2020. So for today, the title for today is it's a very for this social media age. The title is Dealing with Imperfections in Marriage. So why I see it's an important subject for us to understand, especially in this age, is because social media plays a huge part of influence in expectations that we have for ourselves. So for today, we get the benefit of hearing from a married couple live, and we are very blessed to have our directors from South Lahi, Khalid. The both of them have always been very passionate about social issues, and so it's best that because they have a lot of ground experiences over the years in South Lahi, so it's best that we engage them during this session. If we will be having a lot of questions because we have collected a lot of questions throughout the past few days through social media, and also to highlight we are calling out to for everyone to sponsor for the Sacred Path of Love 2020, because if you guys have been following us this month since the circuit breaker, we have been very busy with our online programs, and we hope and we seek your help out there to help sponsor our future online programs, and especially for the Sacred Path of Love. So you can visit this our website saudlahi.com, or you can contact us at this number that you see down here on the screen, 96704471, if you'd like to sponsor in by any means at all. All right, so now we move on to the session. Can we welcome Khalid, Ajmain, and Ainun Harun? You're muted.
Muted now? No, right?
No. Okay.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much for your introduction. Nice to see you again.
Nice
Inshallah.
to see you too.
And
Always good to
I
see you.
saying hi and assalamu alaikum to everyone who is watching this wherever they are from. We pray that they are in good health and well-being, inshallah.
Okay. All right. So before we start off with all these questions that we have, I think there are a lot of people out there who follow the both of you on social media, and I'm sure they would be very curious to know how, because this is about marriage, right? So how you met each other and how it eventually led to marriage. So perhaps Khalid, you could tell the story of how you met and how it led to marriage.
You want Ainun to start on me because it's always ladies and gentlemen. No,
Ladies.
you want to start first? Okay, don't campas. No, I don't know how it begins, but actually I first met my wife 2002 at Wardah. At that time, Wardah books just open. They are newly open. And at that time, their bookstore was at Tasnim. You know the Tasnim? That was the original Wardah when they first started.
Oh, okay, I didn't know.
So, yeah. So, that time, I also didn't know my wife lah. But it happened that she asked about one book and she asked about one saint, Muslim saint. And
Mashallah.
Ibrahim Wardah was looking at me like, wow, she asking me about that. So that's how I got to know her, but I didn't know anything about her. I just know as a person, like that lah. I mean, nothing, we never do anything about anything. So later on, I think after 6 years, then I married her. It was after I came back from pesantren and I was doing korban, Hari Raya Idul Adha at Solo. At the time, I was helping one of my ustad, my teacher lah, Ustad Saleh Masro. And they were very poor, in the village, Jawa, Central Jawa. So I was doing like, that time no Facebook, no nothing lah. So I was just messaging. And she happened to have that, I happened to have her book, her name. And because at one time she messaged me, she wanted to buy the Maulud, right? Dia Ulami was composed by Habib Umar. MashaAllah, we also near to Rabi Awal. So,
Mashallah.
but we didn't get to meet also because it was raining and I think I was soaked with rain because I didn't bring umbrella at that time. So I said, I'm not gonna. So, cut story short, that's why we got to meet lah. And when she wanted to do korban, and then after that, I was like, oh, I get to know that she has a blog and she writes very well until today. Yeah, and everybody actually followed her because she got a lot of interesting insight lah, from Sufism, personal struggle. So that's why I get to know her lah. I mean, macam, oh, this is, but she used the name Ihsan, correct? And then after that, but when I got to know her, but I had a feeling, no, when I get to know her because of the korban, I know that this must be that lady, or that sister lah kan.
Wow.
Yeah, so somehow it connects lah. So from there, I add her in my Yahoo Messenger. Just add randomly lah. Then we got chat, and after that, we somehow felt like maybe we have the same interest. Correct. We like Sufism. We like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. We like all this like Sufi path and everything. Betul. We both have that
The
same
common
interest
ground.
lah. Yeah. So that's how it started, and we straight away got married lah. We only know each other for 1 year. Correct. 1 year only, and then I met her parents. And then her parents know that I have the intention to marry her. That's it. The rest is history. I told my mother, so I want to marry. That's it. Yeah, so only macam about 1 year we know each other, and then we got married. I'm not saying that it's a miracle thing or what lah, but maybe because at the age I already was 31
Mm.
and she was 28, and I don't think we sort of desperate also, no, but I think it's just a way of seeing things macam she ever told me lah, nak kahwin kahwin, tak nak kahwin sudah. Because at that time I was sick. I came back from pesantren, mind you. I don't have any work. At that time macam tak tahu nak kerja apa, and I don't want to be a teacher also. So I decided to work some places and I don't really earn that much. But Alhamdulillah, when looking back at that journey, she accepted me as who I am. And that's how I grew also through her. You have to say, I say a lot.
No, I think just that, I think it was 8 months after we met.
Oh,
So I just
okay.
started work. So I remember, yeah. Yeah, basically he told me everything about the how we met. So
But
nothing much.
maybe I can hear from you. Okay, like actually, I wanted to ask this while Khalid was talking.
Mm.
Because most people have this thinking, that you have to have common ground. I mean, it's a blessing that your future partner has a common ground, and it sort of like makes the marriage, the compatibility easier. But what would you say to like for those couple who are like who don't have common ground, but you think that it will be a hindrance in the marriage?
I think it depends on, when you say common ground, it doesn't mean the same personality, because I think our
Yeah, it
personality is
doesn't.
quite
Yeah,
the opposite.
yeah, correct.
Then, but I think it's important to actually identify like what is important to you personally in life. And for me personally, I feel that my interest in spirituality is something that's important to me. So if at that time, if my partner is not into it, and uh, and we don't share that same interest, then I felt like that's not something I'm looking for, because at least I want him to be supportive of what I'm doing, or not stopping what I'm doing, you see. He doesn't need to be into it like I am, but I felt like it's important that he does not stop me from it, because if that happens, then I felt it's not going to work out, because it's something important to me. So I think each person, I mean, they don't necessarily they are not necessarily into spirituality, so it might be something else that is important to them. So they need to find out whether the future partner actually supports them in what is important for them. If it's something that is totally different, then it's a problem, I felt, in the future.
Uh, just to be clear lah, even we will have the same interest and we have the same forte, yeah. But actually, we also struggle before the marriage because I had, as I said, I do not have a proper career. And kau baru balik, from pesantren, and then after that I fall sick. There's something growth in my mouth, and only like 5 years, 4 years ago, then I confirmed that I lost a lot of my teeth after that. But prior to that, lah, we all like macam don't want to go lah, don't want to go doctor lah, all that. But that was the critical point lah. And I think we muhasabah each other, correct? We muhasabah, we argued, but I think my confidence in marrying her is her lah, she herself, because she don't mind marrying someone like me. And to think that I don't have a proper, Singaporean, we are very typical, like macam nak kahwin, duit macam mana, rumah macam mana, kan, habis nak kasi bini makan macam mana. But I think because of her character, that she's from young, she used to hardship, and she used to go through a lot of difficulty. So somehow it helps me to be independent. We have to work together, right? That's why it's not just the same interest that can help you. It is the willingness to support each other and having the adab in helping one another. So if let's say your wife, your future wife, or even your wife you are married, and she has something critical to say to you, you must be open to be receptive lah, to accept it. And then if you don't agree, then you have to sit down and talk and discuss. Like, I think we went through that, and we openly, she, lah, my wife, she sometimes can be very hard and and very direct, but I'm used to it lah, because I felt that macam there is someone who is accepting me as who I am, and there is a woman who don't mind sharing her life with me. I remember all my teachers, right, whether the late Maulana Sheikh Nazim, Sheikh Zakaria, and even now Sheikh Mahi, they said that if a woman willing to live with you, you must be syukur and you must be grateful. At the same time, learn to not say understand only, learn to serve with a purpose, right? Learn to serve with a purpose means like you have to tell her like, okay, this one I can do, this one I cannot do, and what is your expectation, right? But of course, when we married, I'm being honest with you, she let go of her expectation on me because I think I'm not someone who, I would say, very serious in a sense of, oh, had to be this way. And she find out like macam she thought like I'm someone serious because I'm with the Habib, the Sheikh and all that. Then when she married me, like I happy go lucky kind of thing. Then she personally said lah, I think she told Abu so, Abu Sufyan, and she said like, when I married, when she married me, like I'm her, like macam
So,
remove her OCD, you know.
yeah, I remember this.
But but make no mistake lah, it's never a one way thing and it's never easy. It's
Yeah.
all dealing with the ego. Really, my ego rabak bit kena. You know, when you married, like yeah.
So I gather from your story, there was a lot of tawakal as well because before the marriage, Khalid was having illnesses and then, unemployment. But I guess this is part of the processes like tawakal to Allah and everything and being sincere in the choice of your partners and also having healthy expectations, which leads me to this first question. Um, okay, as the saying goes, expectation is the root of all heartache. Much of married life, especially in the beginning stages, necessitates both partners to adjust their expectations of one another to suit reality. Living together under the same roof with your partner also inevitably uncovers each partner's hidden defects. I think we spoke about this, curing Ainun's OCD that may not have been evident before marriage. When this happens, conflict is bound to occur. What is your advice on how couples can healthily navigate such conflicts and overcome the differences in expectations versus reality of marriage and of each other?
Okay, that's very interesting. We are
Yeah,
12 years married,
yeah, 12
and
years.
we struggle also a lot. And we went through, those who know us personally know that my wife is also very ill after we got married. So, but we never see it as an obstacle. We see it as a journey to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. That's where the Sufism connected. We both have that interest. Later on, not the starting, you know. Because the starting you had to deal with a lot of other things. And I have to say that my mother-in-law, my late mother-in-law, she's also a beautiful woman, and she don't mind me marrying her daughter. And she's very generous and very nice and very kind. And she put some hantaran. I had to work out that hantaran. You know, and we had argument what hantaran and this and that and that and this and that. But alhamdulillah, we did it. But I think dealing with expectation is always about what you think of marriage. Like what you think of marriage, because a lot of people they don't understand the goal of marriage. Because having children, having good house, good career, car or whatever that luxury, alhamdulillah. But that is a milestone. The goal is still knowing that you and your wife or your husband is a journey to Allah. And this is a difficult part for a lot of people, because people keep thinking macam that kind of situation you need to solat and everything. Yeah. But at the end of it is, what if things doesn't happen the way you want it? Isn't it Allah is the one who gives you? So for me now, I have a house. Even though it's 3 room, I still in debt. I still have to pay the loan, right? But the risky is tawakal lah, like what you said. But still having this lady, special lady beside me, it's like, holding on to the fort, right? Because in your marriage, there'll be a test in everything, right? Not necessary like just having holiday, staycation, but also managing. Kalau you cannot go holiday, then what? You angry with your husband, you angry with your wife. If you cannot have children, then what? You angry with Allah. No, right? So you need to know that at the end of it is that we travel together to Allah. We help each other to Allah. Right? The good and the bad, we accept it with an open heart. And we are here to serve each other. We are here to, I'm blessed to have a generous wife, really. My wife is very generous. I'm saying live, and I'm not angkat her, but this is the reality. I'm marrying a generous, and Allah give me a wife that is so generous because I like to do dakwah work maybe. And Allah just gives someone who steady the ship. That's it. Right? But there's a lot more details, and these kind of things, particular details, right? You should ask women. They're very critical on it.
Mhm. I think with regards to expectations, especially when you just started, right? Because the first year probably is the time where you find out a lot about each other, and there are things that you may not like about each other. And the thing here is to recognize that you come from two families, so obviously your the way you do things, the way you think is different. And that's why the first year is probably one of the most challenging, because you are trying to find out, or you're trying to adjust to each other. But the key here, I guess, is that you must be patient with each other, and to recognize that, you know, sometimes after you get married, then you know that, okay, maybe the way you think or the way that you do things is not the only way to do it, because you realize that, okay, this person has another way of thinking, another way of doing things. And that's where I guess the compromise also comes in, like whether you are willing to, give, I mean, whether you're willing to compromise on some things. And that's very important, because if you just want to do it your way, then it's going to be very hard, because then you'll get into arguments, and you cannot make it work, because each side will think like, okay, my way is the best way. But it's also about compromise and seeing like, okay, maybe we can do it another way. So I guess this is very important. And also, like, it's adjusting lah for me. Living alone, I was a bit OCD, I would say. Like, actually, the way the way I live earlier was like, okay, everything must must be clean and good. So when I get married, I mean, there's I have to let go of some of that expectations. Like, I do not want to be arguing. I mean, even when like, for example, couples, when they have children, right? You can choose to spend like all day screaming, and I mean, children will be children, and they're going to make a mess. Or you can decide, okay, maybe I'm not going to get angry all the time, so I'm just going to deal with it. So these are the kind of, because it's small daily things, right? Things that I think, for me, instead of continuously trying to change your spouse in something that they keep doing, which is not exactly big lah, not wrong, like not sinful or things like that, right? If you're talking about small things, then whether you are willing to let it go or you want to argue over it, because I see like some people, they really argue about even the tiniest details, and this is actually very stressful to the relationship. Because I mean, it's more stressful to yourself, because you're getting angry all the time. So the stress is actually on you when you get angry about even the smallest things.
Okay, so I gather that the first year of marriage is usually the most difficult because you discover each other and discover each other's what do you call that, so-called flaws lah, if I can say.
Yeah, but I think, sorry to cut you out also, but I also think, because based on my experience lah, not everyone has the similar kind of experience. Some of them, from what I gathered and know personally, they know each other way longer before they got married.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems easier.
Yeah.
But I think in neglecting what is the reality of your expectation, since you're talking about expectation, kan,
Yeah.
it does affect them mentally as years gone by. If they are not in the state of acceptance, like what she said, you
Okay.
must be willing to accept the weakness of your spouse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of course, it's not in the level of uh, sins or abuse. You know,
Yes. Correct.
for example, like if your husband like to watch porn, then there's something wrong completely. You cannot say never mind lah, he's the guy, but you affect your marriage, you affect your children, or it affect your environment, because it's abnormal. But that's the thing that people don't see, right? So some people, their tests arrive in the beginning. Some people, their test is before. Some people their test in the middle and towards the end. You see. So uh it the beauty of me and my wife knowing and understanding people's struggle is because our work at South Ilahi at like Sacred Path of Love lah. So we understand, and actually almost everyone have problems in their marriage, but the willingness to serve each other with adab and the willingness to learn, to improve yourself, and knowing that your marriage is leading to Allah because you're gonna die anyway, right? And
Yes.
that is the key to your expectation. Boleh
Okay.
tak boleh? Let go or not let go? Yeah, seriously.
Correct.
Kan? Yeah.
Yeah. So, when you have mentioned a couple of times today itself that the purpose of marriage is actually about the journey to Allah. But like not many of us are blessed to know this type of information that, that we actually see marriage as, a journey to witness Allah. But I think we are living in a generation that we get married because of emotions, because I like me, I sorry, I like you, you like me, like let's just get married. So so I think it's based on the intentions, having the right intentions to get married, right? So this leads me to the next question, because this next question questions about the popular culture, the phrase, the 7-year itch. So it refers to the apparent loss of happiness in a marriage that happens after the first 7 years. It assumes that after the initial honeymoon stage of marriage has passed, both partners will get bored of each other. Consequently, some may even turn to infidelity. Some might say, I just don't love him or her anymore. Why is it that people find themselves in such situations? And what is your advice on dealing with this situation? I feel that this leads back to the purpose, the intention of the marriage, and how can we, like, I mean, to avoid all this, whatever, like popular culture, 7-year age, and being bored of each other, how can we refine our intentions before we get married?
I think different people, different experience, correct. And I think some people, when they had similar experience like us before marriage, perhaps they give up. And
Mm,
I'm telling you that nobody look at me and like, wow, Khalid, because nobody, you don't have a proper career, you don't have good enough money to travel for holiday, right? So for me and my wife, I thank Allah because at the beginning of it, we already confront the reality, right? And she is very, very regiment in the beginning, like no, yes, no, yes. Later on, then she start to open up and start to say, okay, that kind of thing. But what I'm trying to say is that everybody go through differently, and doesn't mean that if someone started not with the intention for Allah, the marriage will be bad. No,
okay.
it's all about how you respond to circumstances. Sometimes Allah awake you. Maybe you had miscarriage. She had miscarriage twice. I mean, and sometimes Allah give you a test just to remind you that your life doesn't belong to each other. That's why you need to take care of each other. You need to, because your wife is a property from Allah. She is from Allah. Your husband also is a property from Allah. Is from Allah. When you die, you don't go to your wife. You don't go to your husband. You go to Allah. And this is the difficult part for people to acknowledge. But having said that, also, we had seen people who are very religious, very, very religious inclined or in religious circle, they also end up in divorce. So the test is your maturity and sincerity. But perhaps for some people, Allah loved them the most, that they were being tested in their marriage. They end up in divorce, which is good for them. Because at the end, you kenal Allah, you know Allah, right? But for some people, they not say they are safe, but just that Allah make it that way, that okay, along the journey they know Allah. Because I know a lot of families who started not really care much about religion. It's more of a culture, and you know, I love you, you love me, but later on, because of the struggle that they have to go through, that they turn to Allah. But it's good to have the intention that the marriage is for Allah, so that you recognize your duty and your role as a husband, as a wife, knowing that you are trying your best to help each other to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And you are trying your best as a husband to see that you are able to learn your defects, you are able to learn that you need to improve your character, and you look at your wife, the same thing, right? That's why marriage actually purify your ego. Marriage open up a lot of uh, divinity in it, because you need Allah. Correct or not? Because at the end of it, you'll be tested with risky. You'll be tested. Some people married because of companionship, but then end up their spouse, maybe mostly their husband, have to work shift, have to work shipyard, or have to travel around the world, or maybe the wife, you know. So that is the struggle lah. So at the end of it is, if you don't come back to Allah, come back to Allah is not only solat, right? Not only zikir, not only read Quran, but how you treat each other. That's why I remember the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he said that those who are close to Allah are those who take good care of their wife, right? And also, of course, wife also who take good care of their husband. But different people, different tests. And I have to say this because not everyone is the same. And some people, they will go through their divorce. And but for us, it's not for us to say to them, alah kau apa inilah, inilah, itulah. No. Just let it be. Because you do not know what sort of test they are going through. Right? And we have to thank Allah that we are still together, because it's Allah's mercy also. Correct or not? It's Allah's mercy. So you need to find Allah in your marriage, so that you can find tranquility and stillness, despite going through trials and tribulations. Now my wife have a very severe sickness, her kidney and so on. But I think we still find happiness. We find happiness in makan, brisk walk, zikir, watching football. Now she's a die-hard football fan of hers. I never know that. And it just changed 3 years ago, right? So things change. And at that point of time, when doctor said I was supposed to die according to his medical experience, and we came back, that was Ramadan. Right after I came back from Istanbul, that was Ramadan. And that time there was Euro 2016. Remember? And then she subscribed. And then I cannot go to Trawi, what? Because I'm sick. You know? So now we both, we Trawi at home, and then we watch football. And then we do wazifah. Just two of us. But I always remember my mother always said, if you zikir, if you salawat, if you read Quran, you are not alone. You are not two-person. There is Allah and the Prophet. You know, and all this hardship we went through, we still, when I see her smile, alhamdulillah. Now, so that's the expectation that people are looking for: honeymoon, holiday, staycation. Nothing wrong. That is your choice. But you need to realize, like macam pandemic, right? Circuit breaker. You cannot go anywhere. And how? You lose your faith with your spouse. Or your marriage is not colorful anymore. So not all the time is sunny, and not all the time is raining. Right? So pray for those who are struggling and those who divorce, because this is their test. Right? I think she got more to share.
Mm, I think, especially these days, I guess not so much like our generation, because like today's generation, they are so exposed to social media, right? So even like Netflix, and I realized that a lot of the movies, they mention this thing about, keeping the love alive,
Yeah.
and the expectation there is actually quite unreal, because in those shows, like some of it that I watch, they are expecting, like, okay, you need to forever have that kind of love, and that love doesn't change, you know, that
Yeah.
kind of love that comes from, you know, the when you first met,
Yeah, the
it has to
honeymoon
go
period.
through, yeah, the honeymoon period has to go throughout. But that's not the case, because even things like your spouse not paying as much attention to you, right, is actually quite a progressive thing, because if you have kids, then you know your attention turn to your kids. Or even as you, even if you don't have kids like us, as you go along, things change. So your expectations have to go along with it. You cannot expect it to be exactly like, okay, that first honeymoon year, no. And it doesn't mean that if you don't have that feeling, right, it doesn't mean that, you know, the marriage is no longer functioning, no longer should not, is no longer working, and you look for something else. I felt that that is an unreal expectation, because if, as he said, like you marry for the sake of Allah, right, then you know that actually this marriage itself is a spiritual journey, and it's not only about me and you know, the two of us. It's also about Allah. So even when people ask us like, okay, should I get divorced or should I stay, we cannot give the answer, because that answer lies with Allah. So sometimes Allah plan for you to get divorced, sometimes he plan for you to stay together. And that's why it's important actually to always seek guidance from Allah. So yeah, in istihara, whenever you want to decide on something big, even in something small, but I mean, basically we do more of it when it's something big, right? So you need to see that actually the marriage is a spiritual path. If you don't see that way, then if it's only about you and the two of you, then you will find that, you know, you cannot live uh, when things change after 7 years. Obviously many things are going to change, so you're not able to accept the fact that, you know, why can't I be like, you know, that first year. Yeah.
Okay.
So
So I gather from these replies that, from the first question of having the intentions, aligned and everything, will set the ground for an acceptance for each other to work on each other's throughout their journey lah. So basically, when we talk about divorce, we mentioned divorce and everything, right? So I think the question is like the next question is basically, okay, disagreements and conflicts are normal even in healthy marriages. We've mentioned that. So I think this question, it's about, when you're fighting for too long, like, when like from the previous question, we were asking, like, the happiness, if the other unhappiness stays, and the fight stays, and there's the question of divorce. So how is it that, in your opinion, which at which point, I know this contradicts what you just last said, Ainun, because you said that, Allah has planned for you to get a divorce, Allah has planned for you to stay together. But in your opinion, when is the right time, or maybe like the high risk of you staying in this relationship, that that you should get a divorce?
okay, I think, as I said just now,
Yeah.
it's not something that we can give a straight answer to. Different people
Mm.
have like, the situations can vary so much, so to give a generic answer is actually quite hard.
Yes. We
So
can't generalize.
yeah, so I guess the first step, of course, as I say, is to do istihara, and to see and to do istihara continuously, because I felt that in such big decisions, most of the time, it actually takes a few rounds of istihara for you to get that certainty of where you're going. So do it up to 7 times, and if you're still not sure, then you do it until you gain that certainty. So that is the first thing, because we as humans, there are things that we don't know. Even if you go to a counselor, the counselor won't know what Allah knows, you know. so
Yeah.
so they cannot tell you what is the best. So do istihara first, and then I guess in some situations, I'm just putting this generally, but in some situations, maybe you can seek help from the counselor, like couple counseling, if it's an issue that both of the parties are willing to work out. If it's not something that they are willing to work out, if one party wants to work it out but the other doesn't, then there's a thing that, you know, they are stuck. So whatever situation they are in there, they are stuck. So they need to find a way out, and as I said, to make that decision, they need to istihara again, as I said. Only in situations where both parties are willing to work it out, then they have other options that they should try out. Or even, I mean, even if you don't want to go for like couple counseling, right, you can get advice from, let's say, your teachers or someone who you trust, who can give you good advice. And it's important, I mean, this is shura, so you get advice, and people might give you a better advice than what you can think of.
I
Okay.
think one of the main issue that I always learn when I met a lot of people who share about their divorces or their marriage crisis is that everybody expect perfection and miracles.
Yeah.
They like macam, why is this not happening? Or what is there macam not functioning as a couple together, for example. And I think the bottom line is like what Ainun said, my wife said, is istihara, ask Allah what's the best, counseling, or ask people who are good at this. You know, they can give you a better scenario in a way that they can make you, both of you, see things in a wholesome manner, rather than you see what is in front of you, but you see the whole thing, right? And I think like what my wife said, social media and all that, they create another expectation that is sometimes I felt very deluding or very delusional lah, to achieve something that you want. But nothing in life is permanent. Right? Example, if you think that your spouse has a bad habit, what sort of bad habit is it?
Take,
Gambling, drugs, cigarette, alcohol, and how does it affect you mentally and spiritually? This is very important because your sanity matters and your spiritual matters, because it helps you to be a human, you know, to to continue living as human being, able to think properly, able to respond appropriately. Because what I seen throughout my experience at South Ilahi for 10 years, a lot of people lost the way how they see things when they become the victim of physical and mental abuse. And this is why I always encourage people every now and then to learn how to understand the spiritual aspect of your marriage after 3 to 4 years. Because sometimes when you married, after 4 years, you becomes an autopilot mode, and then it gets bored. That's why people want more and more holiday, want more and more staycation, just to revive that spirit. But sometimes that spirit can no longer endure to continue its purpose. Sometimes you hit a wall, like maybe you don't have enough money anymore, perhaps you cannot retrench, or your business not well. It's a test, along the way. And that's why we come back to the drawing board with each other and said, look, we are here. So where we go now? What do you want to achieve? Just like when you starting, you are about to get married kan, you say berapa hantaran, how much is the hantaran, how much is the dowry, how
yeah.
much is this, how much is that. There's a plan, right?
Yeah.
But after that, you also need a plan to realize that Allah is the planner. But if you don't plan, you just autopilot, and then after that you expect miracles in your life, you expect happiness whenever you travel, you expect everything. It doesn't work that way in life, because we are human. We get bored easily. We feel frustrated when our spouse are not responding to what we want. Sometimes it's not about what you want. Sometimes it's to see everything clearly so that you both know that we don't think alike. Me and my wife, we still have disagreement. Sometimes we still argue. We still argue, but after argument, we have satay finish. You know, like, because I think it's still important
Yeah.
to have a critical thinking in your marriage. That's why marriage is to purify your ego. That means that maybe just because I'm a guy, I'm a husband, doesn't mean I'm always right. That's why I thank Allah. I have a wife who see things differently, right? So what you do with your marriage, how you spend money in your marriage is critical. Just
Mm.
because you earn 5,000 a month, does that benefit and guarantee your happiness? I have seen people, professional also, get divorced. So money is not only the issue. The issue is how do we connect each other for Allah. And doesn't mean that we have to be the same. Doesn't mean that we have to think alike. Is like what is mentioned? It's best to be different also, so that when you are analyzing the situation, she see things differently, you see things differently. At the end of it is everyone has their own opinion. Doesn't mean that is right or wrong. In most cases, of course, in some cases, it's clear lah what is right and wrong or what are the right things to do. But it's always best to have second option. And then you learn. Then you say, okay, my husband cannot afford. So how? Then what? Find another husband. It doesn't work that way, what? Right? So the best is to have that tranquility in a home is to serve each other. That's where love comes from, right? Because the ego is not in that existence.
MashaAllah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, for the next question, it leads like something like what you mentioned about mental illness, because nowadays we often talk about triggers in the context of mental health issues like trauma, anxiety, and depression. Partners who experience domestic abuse or severe childhood emotional neglect, for example, may appear to be well adjusted adults, but can react in unexpected and uncharacteristic ways when they are triggered without realizing it. So, this will cause a huge strain on the marriage. So, like, how can couples learn to support, help, and understand each other in dealing with such as mental health issues together in the marriage?
I think the thing is that it's good um to know your partner well, even before marriage, to see to know their background and what they're like, because when it comes to people with a traumatic past, it's always complicated, because um if they become abusive, for example, is it something that you can take? And most of the time, I mean, the scholars always say this, that if you know that your future partner is good, has your future partner has been abusive to you, then don't go into that marriage, because I think he or she needs to resolve the issue first. So this is something that you should think about before marriage. But if you are married, or you choose to get married, and then you are facing these issues with your partner, and I would say that it varies, you see, because some people, they have a traumatic past, but they have handled it in some way, but they still get triggered sometimes. And then there's people who have a traumatic past, they haven't dealt with it at all, so the effects is quite terrible. So you can't really generalize also for this group of people, because some of them are able to cope better than others. So if, let's say, is something, they are still triggered from time to time, and you're married to this person already, so you need to think about um whether, how bad is it. Because if the moment he's triggered, he hits you, then it's not something good, then you need to get help, right? If when he's triggered, he says something bad, and then the question for you to ask yourself is whether you can take it, um whether you can just ignore it, or whether it's something that really affects you and you need to get help. So you need to ask yourself that, whether, okay, this is something, because I can't tell. I mean, this is just generalizing, right? So I can't tell how bad it is. So if it's something that you can handle, then maybe what you can do is to know how to react to that. That means maybe for you, you you may try not. You can either argue with him or her, and then it can get worse probably, or you can choose to ignore, and maybe you learn that, okay, he or she after a few hours will be okay. Then you learn, okay, this is my tactic in handling whenever he's triggered or angry, or he shout. Then, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I know that he or she is going to get better after a few hours, so I just leave her or him alone. So
Okay.
you develop these tactics for yourself. But as I said, if it's a bad kind of abuse, something that is really severe, then I really think you should get help. But if it's something that you can handle, then you have these tactics that will help ease the situation instead of escalating it. Yeah, I think. Anything to add?
I think most important is that a lot of people don't realize that marriage is more than I love you, and marriage is more than companionship. Of course, I mentioned earlier just now that everybody has a different experience when it comes to marriage, right? And sometimes you fall in love when you girl, boy, and then the relationship was very long. Or some people, before they become religious, they. But I think it hinges everything. That's why religion also have spiritual, and Islamic spirituality is important. It's not just zikir, it's not just salawat, but the introspection of your heart, your soul. Because when you married, you are dealing with, like what my wife said, someone who came from different background, different family, and how they do things and what they do is always the opposite of what you had learned. And I'm being honest that when I first married her also, I had that awkwardness to blend in, because you are not lelaki, you a son, and son always, you feel like you rugged, you don't really care about manners, or I mean not say manners lah, macam the way how things are, the protocol, but suddenly you go into another family, jeng jeng jeng, it's different, like A, B, C, so you need to adapt. But I think the whole key in Islamic spirituality in marriage, spiritual in marriage, is how sincere you are to yourself. That's why I remember someone asked Syed Abdulaziz a few years ago at Sacred Power of Love. I think it was 3 years ago, 3 or 2 years. I think 2018. What should we do before we got married? And he answered, learn about your social behavior, or learn about your personal behavior, both, because it's a social reality, although it's a personal thing, right? So are you angry or not? And what makes you angry? What sort of anger you have? Is it resentment? Is it through your childhood? Is it because you had someone who break up before, and then you suddenly have that trigger, like macam, oh, you cannot kena certain things.
So it's
And
like we have to understand ourselves so that our reactions, like to understand how our reactions are reflective into the future marriage. Is that?
yeah, I think it's important for us to observe that also. But the problem with us is just that when you love someone, you are like giving them second chance, which is fine. I'm not saying that it's wrong. But what I'm trying to say is that how much do we understand social behavior for ourselves and
Yeah.
the person that we're going to get married to? And if you know your future potential partner or spouse have some issue with anger, you have to look into it carefully. You have to deal with it openly. You cannot say macam, let's say lah, he throw tantrum and he can just throw his mobile phone. There is already a sign of trigger. That means he can do more than that if he is trigger. You know.
But
So
how do we?
how is it that you deal with that? That's the
Yeah.
conclusion. Like what Ustaz Amin said last Monday. Before you marry someone, you have to confront that reality. Correct. No? You have to deal with that reality. But the problem for most of us is that We think love is blind. We don't want to see it as how it is. We
Yeah.
just push forward and expect miracles. But humans are human. We are not robot. You know, like you go to factory and then change and then become better. New battery, but we are human. You are dealing with with your soul that has a lot of resentment. Your heart has a lot of anger, and you expect it to be peace in your marriage.
Yeah.
Right? But the thing is, for most of our community, is that we don't learn all this. We expect things to be. Just now I mentioned autopilot, right?
Yeah.
Now I mentioned about how things will change because of love.
Okay. All
I
right.
think like there's a song like "Love is not enough." Yeah, seriously, I've seen a lot of broken marriage. They end up some brothers or sisters. I said both brothers and sisters who lost sanity.
But I would just want to add, having said that, right, I think the most important thing that you need to think of is, I mean, I'm talking about those who are already married. So the most important thing to think of is when it comes to people, maybe their partner has trauma in the past. The thing that is more important to think is whether you yourself can take it, because that's the most important factor. If your mental health is going to be affected, you might even end up with depression, with whatever it is, anxiety. Then it's not good for you. So maybe you need to get help and then see where it leads from there, whether to stay or to leave, because we are, at the end of the day, we are not saviors. So um, you may love someone and feel like, okay, is something you need to do for them. You say like, okay, I know, I sympathize with him, he has a traumatic childhood, but at the end of the day, how is your mental health? Because if you cannot help, if you are sick, then how can you help other people, right? And that's the thing that people don't really think about, because if you yourself are affected and you're emotionally affected, you're depressed, then how can you help your partner? Then that's not a relationship that's going to go anywhere, because you need to help yourself first before you help others.
I
But
think that.
having said this, sorry, Kismin, having said this also, not necessary that all those who have anxiety have issues in marriage. Could be their partner accept them as a whole, right? But to accept someone who has a volatile temperament is really like walking into a lion's den. I'm sorry to say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. What I wanted to say was that, because I think it's very interesting what you said, and I think our viewers also might be interested to know, like, like before marriage. Let's just take for example, before marriage, and then you realize your partner is, so and so, and then you think that, okay, I think I can deal with it, lah. We can seek help together, and all these things are. But when it gets too bad already, right? And then there will be this guilt, like, but I love him, and how can I do this to him, if I love him, I have to be there for him. So how does one reconcile with such a mentality?
I guess the thing that you have to be very honest with yourself, how are you handling it? Because some people are able to still handle it depending on how bad it is, of course. Whereas some people, they are already at the verge of, complete breakdown. And you can see this. That's why you have to be honest with yourself. Are you going into depression? Are you going to anxiety because of your partner? And it's something that is real, then you need to be honest with yourself and say, okay, this is the time I need help. So the first step is you seek help from, you have FSC and you have other counselors, or you want private counseling. So you seek help first. So you from there you learn about, okay, where am I in this? What's my situation? Because as I said, you, of course, you do not want to be someone who leave someone in the lurch. But at the end of the day, even when it comes to trauma, we cannot say like, okay, I want to help this person when I myself cannot take it, then you're not helping at all, because when you crumble, then what's going to happen? And if you have children, then okay, then they lost both parents, because one
Mm.
is under trauma and the other one just, maybe end up in IMH. So what's going to happen? Because you need to think about your own situation, not as a selfish way, but
Mm.
because if you crumble, and we have seen people who totally lost their mind from abuse, and then you're not helping anyone, no? So you need to save yourself first, and that's the first rule. Even in religion, if you yourself are in danger of whatever it is, then you need to put that as priority first, because it's not your job to change your partner, it's not your job to save him, because of course it's sad, like whatever he or she go through, but it's not an excuse for him or her to continue abusing you.
Okay.
I think this refer back to what I said earlier, that marriage is for Allah. And if you have issues in your marriage, you have to turn to Allah. And it's because no matter how bad your spouse could be, you can only advise and give them a certain hope, but you cannot change them if they are not willing to change. And this is the key, because I felt a lot of people under pressure, and because of the pressure, like what Ainun was saying, they end up in MH, or maybe develop anxiety, depression, stress. I think the main factor is also society. Society play a key role. When a lot of us like to judge a marriage before we know the whole thing. And the problem with society also, not all of us are able to understand what is mental illness, what is abuse is like. We only tend to see things outwardly. Oh, this fellow did this fellow did that. Hey, how can you leave your husband? That's your husband. Hey, how can you do this? How can you do that? Without even understanding what's going on. I remember Sheikh Muhammad Aslam ever said about one of the Sahaba, the Prophet, when he abused his wife, and then the Prophet said, leave your wife. Right? Leave your wife. So, and Sheikh Ninawi said clearly, no one should be abused. No one should be abused at all. Right? So if you have an anger management issue, deal with yourself and do not harm your spouse. But coming to what Ainun also said, and what I'm trying to say is also that unfortunately for many of us, we don't learn all these and we don't really understand. And so it becomes an isolated issue, despite that it becomes like a pandemic also, because it becoming more and more. Just that most of them, they don't report, they don't say anything, because people always associate it with is part of your marriage trial. And if you look at the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they went through hardship, yes, with Sayyidatina Khadijah, Sayyidatina Aisha, different timeline, different with different wife that he went through. But none of the time the trials and tribulation got to do with abuse. The Prophet didn't abuse his wife mentally, spiritually, physically. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ was so nice to them, right? So that they can't even leave him. They love him because he give them love, and that's how we supposed to be. That's why it purify our ego. Because you will trigger. Seriously, you will trigger. I also sometimes react like, hey, I don't agree lah. Tell my wife, oh, cannot lah. No lah. But it's normal, as I said. But maturity and sincerity play a key role, right? But if you cannot, that means you need to seek help. But a
Okay.
lot of time people want to be in a state of denial, and that's the sad part. And I'm saying the truth. I've seen so many marriages for the past 2 years end up in depression because of expectation and unexpected setback, and also social media lah. This is my wife. This is my children. This is my family. Right? But at the end of it is nothing wrong. Again, nothing wrong. I also post about my wife. But how you deal with the expectation. Right? How you deal with your expectation. Because I accept my wife as how she is. Really. Right? Jalal, Jamal, all okay. Go ahead. We argue, we debate. Yeah, I have debate with my wife. But at the end of the day, if she win, okay lah. If she don't, then I said, okay, and we talk about everything. It's not just religion. We talk about politics. We talk about football because that's life. Being yourself. I myself feel so weird when, like, when I was nearly to death. Then suddenly I watch football again with my wife or four people. Then suddenly she down, then she talk, and then suddenly she support my favorite childhood team like Tottenham. Then she know more than Tottenham. She more diehard than Tottenham. I
Yeah,
mean, more diehard fan than me.
yeah.
But the key, what I'm trying to say is that you do not know the similarity and the differences are actually the same. It's all how Allah make it in such a unique way. And if you expect your spouse to be perfect, he's not going to be perfect. But if your spouse cannot change his bad habit, his temperamental, the habit means temperamental. Snoring is not a bad habit. Right? Yeah. I have a lot of bad habits, really. Guys always have a lot of bad habits because we bocap, boy. Lah, it's okay, lah, right? But then she managed to expect it because honestly, you expect, you accept your spouse near weaknesses as long as there is no abuse. Yeah, simple.
Yeah. It's all about accepting and navigating the marriage
Kada
through
and
all
kada
the.
also, right?
Yes. Okay. So, you mentioned about society, right? And this next question leads us to the external factors lah, of the marriage, lah, like the in-laws, because it says studies have shown that constant conflicts with in-laws is the second most common reason why couples end up fighting for divorce in Singapore. So in some cases, part of the problem is that the couple might have significant cultural and religious differences that lead to constant fighting between both partners. These are all very sensitive and potentially explosive problems to deal with in marriage. Although they are not so often talked about, how can couples deal with such conflicts in marriage that are related to in laws and cultural or religious differences?
Okay. I think for cultural differences, right? There's actually that's why there's such a thing as kufu. That means, when before you even get married, you must look at whether you are the same. What's kufu?
Same status.
Same status and all that. It includes culture lah as well. So sometimes when it comes to intercultural, of course, there's going to be problems. And the most important thing is before you get married that you talk about it. Like what are the expectations like? And if you're already married, then I think the most important thing is for the couples to be together. I felt that if the couples are willing to work together, that means if there's any problem with the in-laws, they work it out together. Not like I'm going to, if my husband has a problem with my mother, then I'll just let him handle it. No, I'm just going to ignore it and let him handle it. Then that's not going to work out, because the right way is for the couple to work it out together. That means to discuss and see how you can manage the problem. The problem is if you see that the partner just leaves you on the other end of the pool, like just doesn't care. That's a problem. So couples need to handle it together when it comes to in-laws, um and to be open about it, because I mean it's a sensitive thing, because it's involving your parents, your own parents, and sometimes they feel like you're in a tug of war between two sides. But that is why marriage is always challenging, and that's part of the challenge, is to handle differences. How do you handle it? Because I think one of the problem these days is that people are afraid
Yeah.
to handle issues. So they
Yeah.
just hope that it will eventually
Go away.
miraculously work out. They do not want to address the issue. And when you don't address the issue, it just builds up. So over the years, it becomes more critical, and in the end, it might end in divorce. So it's best to uh,
Deal with it
deal
immediately.
with it immediately, and to be honest with each other, because if you let it be, right, when it comes to in-laws, then it's just going to build up over the years, and then the resentment grow. So when the resentment grow, it's harder in the later years for you to track back and work it out.
I think, like, if I may add, the like one why the resentment grows because problems are not being solved is probably because also some of them feel that these are my parents, I should listen to them, and I should let them have their way. So like how do people deal with that?
I think I mean, I was reading one of the ustaz post. He did say like, and I felt this is very true, that your parents have a right over you, and your wife or your husband also have a right over you. So they both have rights. It's not like one totally doesn't have a right. So when it comes to situations, you need to deal with it with wisdom, and to see which one, you shouldn't like just side with one person. You should try to look at it objectively. And there's no such thing as, okay, because especially when it comes to parents, right, just because it's the parents, okay, everything goes. But if the parent did something wrong, like for example, to maybe to say vulgarities to the in-laws, then
Uh-huh.
you need to step in. You can't
Yeah.
say like, okay, that's fine because just because you're the parents, right?
Yeah.
So these are things that need to be addressed
Yeah.
in a nice way. I'm not saying like you need to, to
Argue.
scold your parents or to block them out, things like that. But it's just to handle it and not to ignore it. And the moment you ignore it, it's going to build up.
I think the key is that I mentioned just now, like a lot of people when they got married kan, I said monotonous kan.
Yeah.
So I think a
Exactly.
lot of people forgot that they need to upgrade their knowledge. They need to upgrade their soul. The upgrade their soul means that you need to do soul searching also in your marriage. Because when you understand the reality of your marriage, then you can see the circumstances clearly. Then you can see when people, how people deal with you, you try to manage it in an adapt manner, right? Because you know, okay, let's say your mother-in-law said, oh, Saturday come my house. But then you said Saturday got menu versus Liverpool. You don't want to come, what? Correct or not? You said my menu versus Liverpool is more important than I visit my mother-in-law. But then when you look at it to a point where you can still watch the game at your mother-in-law, what? Right? You can even influence your mother-in-law to be a Liverpool or Man U fan. I mean, just in a building bridges way.
Yeah.
But I think most of the time we don't want to learn and we don't want to upgrade our soul. But we expect like what she said, my wife said, everything to miraculously happen. Bear in mind that everybody has a different view and mindset. Right? When I first married her, her mother has her way. My mother also has her way. But my mother, because she is already sick, she don't talk that much. But my mother is always a very quiet person. And her mother also don't meddle with us that much. So we don't have a much issue. But sometimes when you have a mother-in-law or father-in-law who try to say like, hey, do this or do that, then you just step back a bit and you think, why did he say that or why she did say that, right? But of course, there will always be like, oh, you favor your mother more than my mother, all this. And that's where you need to be aware of shaitan also. Maybe yeah, it's true. She favor her mother. Her mother, what after all, you know? Oh, your mother more, coming to your mother more. Maybe your husband plays not so nice. My mother plays more nice, you know? So, but don't lose hope in that. That means try to work it out. Talk to your wife, talk to your husband. Open table lah. You know, talk to your in-law. Cakap, mak, you know, Saturday got Liverpool versus menu. You willing to watch with me or not? No, you know. And I think one another aspect when I say upgrade your soul
Yeah. I
is
wanted to ask that.
istihara.
Mm.
Right? Sometimes we forget to istihara on how to deal with the people around us. Because that's why I said just now, sometimes you don't understand where they're coming from and what are they thinking. But the best is always to ask Allah so that He guides you properly. I mean properly as in macam you see the best appropriate way to respond. But sometimes of course it is mental block or mind boggling macam alamak macam mana but zikir, selawat, right, read Quran, ask Allah, Allah, how to go about. But most of the time we think we want to control. Most of the time we think we can change. Istihara, what's the problem with it? Oh
Mm.
Allah, help me how to deal with my mother or my father-in-law or even my parents. Have you done that?
Yeah.
Right. So bring Allah into it to the point that He will help you to ease it. But if you had done that and if He cannot change, then need counselor. Do they have a proper management way of dealing with it rather than like what my wife said, ignore. Because
Yeah.
the longer it goes, it becomes cancerous. Right? It becomes like a demon. You cannot control it anymore. It just finish everything. But best is immediately say, hey, why don't we talk? Why don't we sit together? So understand the situation and know their character. Love them as how you love your parents, or love your parents to the point that you make them understand that everyone has an equal contribution to each other's life. That's where the harmony comes in through Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Kan?
Mm.
Yeah. You cannot ignore the fact that the Prophet and Allah play a role in our marriage as how we are sincere to ourselves and how we did things around us. But of course, there's no perfection. The problem with us is we want to seek perfection, or the problem just diminish. Like Ainun said, my wife said, just what gone just like that, or evaporate. Phew. But it doesn't work that way,
Yeah.
right?
It's about dealing with it.
And if we can see that, you know, family conflict is also like a war zone, man. You hate each other, you don't like each other because the animosity build up, shaitan comes in, your ego is there. So the key is to step back and see it as a whole. And if you cannot see it, then you istihara or ask Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala how to go about, and ask people who have wisdom. Right? Don't post on Facebook and then you expect like a beautiful answer. Oh, you must do this. Oh my, you must do that. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
And I think the problem with a lot of people nowadays is because of social media. You think that you have to pitch yourself to a certain degree that you can attain that perfection in your family. It doesn't work that way. Your life as a human being, you experience everything that is good and bad. Right?
Inshallah. Thank you so much, Khalid and Ainun. I think it was a very beneficial session for the viewers out there. And I think for myself also, there's so many pointers to take back into learning how to deal with imperfections in marriage. And I really want like to bring back this upgrade your soul tagline, because I feel that it's one thing that everyone forgets: spirituality. Seeking help from Allah is the first point before we actually consult others and everything. But I guess you guys did give a very holistic view on how to deal with imperfections. Seeking help from Allah, seeking help from your peers, those you trust and everything, and not to give up. And like, I think we have learned a lot of great deal from you. And I guess you guys are a good living example of long lasting marriages.
Inshallah, I mean, I hope so. We still have a lot of things to learn, Kismet. And we
Yeah,
learn a lot.
journey.
Actually, me and my wife, the way how we see our marriage is also through our volunteerism at South Ilahi over the years, 10 years. And we
Mashallah.
learn uh, to improve our marriage when we learn from all these people who are broken in their marriage or crisis.
Yeah,
Yeah,
mashallah.
so no marriage is perfect.
Yeah,
So I thank Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala for this opportunity. When I serve these people, I learn from them. So
alhamdulillah.
when people come to you to share their problem, it's not that you are better than them. Allah wants to teach you about your journey to Allah through your brokenness too.
That's a good way of looking at it, mashallah. So, okay, we have come to the end of this session. We still have an upcoming session for our marriage series this 17th of October. It's the title is Nurturing Children Facing a Broken Past. This is going to be by Sheikh Abdulaziz, and it's going to be on the 17th of October, 5 p.m. Lecture will be held via Zoom, a closed Zoom session. So it's not going to be live. So you will have to register. So you can register at saudlahi.eventbrite.sg. So registrations are open already. So we are expecting you guys to join us to learn a lot about from Sheikh Abdul Aziz, especially because he has a lot of experiences in dealing with social issues with his community back in Scotland. So another thing to highlight is also that that I've mentioned before previously that these marriage sessions this October is actually a prelude to the Sacred Path of Love 2020, and our team this year is being with God in facing tribulations. Sacred Path of Love will happen on the 5th and 6th of December. We have our scholars here, Imam Amdao, who will this Sacred Path of Love will be online. It will be on Zoom. So we will be joined by Imam Mandao, Syed Abdul Aziz, Ustad Firdaus, Dr. Omar, Dr. Mubarak, and also there'll be a poetry recitation by Amira Aslam. So yeah, so basically day one, you can see the topics over here. We will be touching about the prophet, how to remove pride, how to deal with stress and anxiety, and enduring unexpected setbacks. And these topics are especially aimed for our crisis time right now because we're facing COVID in this period. So how to deal with ourselves during this pandemic. And also day two will be a workshop. It's going to be more interactive. The workshop we have the titles are Between Fear and Hope, The Wings of a Believer, and that is by Dr. Umar Mahmoud and Rizik, Trust in Allah's Plan. So very relatable very relatable topics for these pandemic times. So you can see here the link here is saudlahi.eventbrite.sg. There are three packages. For 2-day package is $70. Yeah, so just stay tuned on our social media, so our social media platforms to get more updates about the Sacred Path of Love this 2020. Also, if you would like to sponsor for us, because if you notice that we Saulahi during has been very busy online, yeah, during this pandemic period since the circuit breaker, we have been bringing a lot of programs online to you, and we appreciate all the sponsorship so far, and we appreciate your viewership as well and your support. So if you would like to sponsor for our future online programs and the Sacred Path of 2020, you may visit www.saulahi.com or contact us at 9670 Yeah, so so please extend your support to us and look out for our programs. See you on the 17th with Sheikh Abdulaziz. Don't forget to register for it. So with that, I thank you so much for watching us tonight. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace out.
Peace out.